All right, hi everybody. Welcome back to another exciting video here. Attorney Steve Vondran. We are talking about defamation, libel, and we're talking about all the crazy stuff that's going on, the crazy shootings and people with these assault rifles and things. And this is not a new thing. It's a sort of a disturbing trend actually. In this case that just popped up today on my radar. Gave me a moment to think about. This is something that I think we need to talk about, but this case involves Palin versus the New York Times Company. And you know, a lot of people don't know that this whole shooting thing and shooting people up apparently over politics or whatever people are shooting each other for is just literally getting out of hand. So there's a lot of talk now about gun control, background checks. I know they have background checks. I'm not a gun expert. I don't pretend to be. But there's so much stuff going on. In this Sarah Palin case, you remember her. She was the Republican vice president candidate under John McCain, sort of his last-ditch effort to try to save his campaign. It didn't work. But this has to do with a defamation case that she filed against the New York Times back in 2017. I found it back here in 2017. And you could see it was opened in 6/27/17 and closed very shortly thereafter. And what happened is the judge dismissed the case. The judge said, that they held an evidentiary hearing and said there wasn't enough evidence for the case to go forward. But that was only at the pleading stage. At the pleading stage, when you're filing your pleadings with the court, the judge is supposed to accept all reasonable inferences and allow the case to go forward. So New York Times was arguing, hey, there's judge, and this was in the district court case, judge, it's right here. In fact, this is right out of their pleading. The editorial that we wrote did not say any of this. It did not mention Miss Palin's name. It mentions Miss Palin's name just once. And sometimes that's all it takes. Stating that the crosshairs map that was circulated by an organization affiliated with Sarah Palin before the shooting, Sarah Palin's Political Action Committee circulated a map of targeted electoral districts that put Ms. Giffords and 19 other Democrats under stylized crosshairs. So here's the map. Take a quick look. So apparently Sarah Palin's PAC committee, Political Action Committee, they put out this thing that said it's time to take a stand, and here's some people that were, people on their list or whatever. And so you can see it here. I don't know if that's inciting a riot or anything or encouraging violence, but accordingly, apparently, New York Times wrote an article that basically her Political Action Committee circulated a map, and then this sort of suggested that maybe this was inciting the problems in the world, okay? So they wrote this big detailed memo, talks all about New York Times versus Sullivan Standard, if you know what that is from law school. And here's the thing, and let me get this out of here. I'll try to anyway. Lock me out. Go ahead. So let's go over here, but I want to go over to this. This was the Supreme Court, the United States Court of Appeals, Second Circuit. That's out in New York. So the case was dismissed at the district level. The court held an evidentiary hearing and said, well, the complaint's just not quite plausible. And the United States Court of Appeals here for the Second Circuit said, that's improper. We're not going to say anything about the merits of the case or whatnot, but it's improper to dispose of a defamation case like that at the pleading stage. And so now Sarah Palin will have her day in court again against the New York Times. And again, the New York Times standard will be applied. So this is interesting. I mean, I have never seen so many defamation cases flying around these days. It's really crazy, okay? Defamation by entertainers and politicians, particularly politicians. I mean, they're really getting in. So here's this case back from, a couple of years back, and now it's finally here, 2019. And the court talks about, and in fact, this is kind of the essential holding here, but the case is ultimately about the First Amendment, but the subject matter implicated in this appeal is far less dramatic. The rules of procedure and pleading standards. Sarah Palin appeals the dismissal of her defamation case against the New York Times for failure to state a claim. The district court, uncertain as to whether plaintiffs or Palin's complaint plausibly alleged all of the required elements of her defamation claim, held an evidentiary hearing to test the sufficiency of Palin's pleadings. This is what the court didn't like. Following the hearing and without converting the proceeding to one for summary judgment, that's a whole nother story. If you go outside the pleadings, the court can convert it to a motion for summary judgment. The district court relied on evidence adduced at the hearing to dismiss Palin's complaint under Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 12b-6. That's your failure to state a claim. We find that the district court erred in relying on facts outside the pleadings. Okay, that was an error. So this is why she's going to get another shot at it. Okay, so the case is not dismissed. It's going to go back and it's going to go through full discovery, may proceed to full discovery. So that's the standing of the case. So like I said, we're seeing a lot of these cases. You can see this is like kind of why I wanted to talk about this. It brings a lot of things together. It brings in the defamation. It brings in the two-party political system that is up in arms with each other. Brings in President Trump, who some people are up in arms with, some people love him. Brings in the media, and what's the media's role in all this? And, you know, these recent shootings are really disturbing because, as you can see, this is a continuing thing. It's a continuing thing. And, you know, to me, there's a lot of things that can play a role in why somebody would start shooting. It's not just, you know, everybody always looks for the easy answer. Well, it must be Trump. Well, it must be this political action committee. Well, maybe it's the media. Well, maybe the person is on marijuana, recreational marijuana. Maybe that should be addressed. Maybe the person is on the opioids, and, you know, maybe they're playing video games that are causing problems and stirring up violence. You know, maybe they're lonely. Maybe they're marginalized. You know, so there's all kinds of potential reasons, but people resorting to this kind of violence is out of control. And what it's really doing, from my perspective, a lot of kids are growing up. The kids are growing up with anxiety at young ages because they're growing up. They hear about this stuff. So I don't know what needs to be done. I think it's just completely crazy times. I just don't think it helps when everybody gets in and we're all, you know, stirring the pot here. So they are looking at gun control right now, as they've been doing for years and years. So we'll see what happens with that. But here you can see on January 8th, Jared Loughner opened fire at a political rally for Democratic Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords in Tucson, Arizona. The Loughner shooting, killing 6 people and injuring others. Representative Giffords was seriously wounded in the attack. Shortly before the tragic attack, Sarah Palin's Political Action Committee, Sarah PAC, had circulated a map that superimposed the image of Crosshair's target over certain Democratic congressional districts, evoking in the views of many images of violence. So here we go again. On one side, it's violence. On the other side, it's rallying your base. Giffords' district was among those targeted by the Sarah PAC Crosshairs map. The image had been publicized during the earlier political controversy surrounding the Affordable Care Act, but in the wake of the Loughner shooting, some speculated that the shooting was connected to the Crosshairs hat. Now, I don't know how you make, again, people are trying to do this now, making these connections. Well, maybe it's video games. Well, maybe it's the Trump speech. Maybe it's some, you know, this, that, or the other. No evidence ever emerged to establish that link. In fact, the criminal investigation of Loughner indicated that his animosity towards Representative Giffords had arisen before the Sarah PAC published the map. This is why you don't jump to conclusions, run on Twitter, start telling everybody what happened when you don't know the facts, okay? 6 years later, on June 14, 2017, another political shooting occurred when James Hodgkin opened fire in Alexandria, Virginia, at a practice for a congressional baseball game. He seriously injured 4 people, including Republican congressmen. So anyway, so you can see all this is going on here. And so, like I said, I mean, I think we need to do something to calm the rhetoric by everybody. I mean, to get people to calm down, especially the media. So Sarah Palin sued the media, and of course, what happens when you're a public figure like Sarah Palin suing a media defendant? You have to show actual malice. Okay, and this is where the case is going to go. So she needs to prove that, number one, that this statement by the New York Times that mentioned her name just once was of and concerning her. And so that's going to be a factual question. Was it of and concerning her? And she also needs to show under New York laws where the case was filed, where the defendant resides, where their business is. A defamation plaintiff must establish 5 elements. 1, written defamatory statement. I'm having trouble today. A written defamatory statement of and concerning the plaintiff. 2, publication to a third party. It has to be published to more than just one person. 3 is fault. 4, falsity of the defamation statement. Truth and opinions are protected. And 5, special damages or per se actionability. Certain things are per se damaging, okay? In addition, here's our New York Times standard, in case you were waiting for this. A public figure plaintiff must prove that an allegedly libelous statement was made with actual malice. There it is, actual malice. That is, made with knowledge that it was false or with reckless disregard of whether it was false or not. Some people call it the serious doubts test. And so she's going to have to prove that they knew what they were saying was false, reckless disregard of whether or not it was false, and so that raises some other issues. So I'm not going to go into much more than that. I just wanted you to see this case, and again, know these shootings are not a new thing. There's a lot of discussion on gun control and background checks, and my personal opinion is you don't need these crazy assault rifles, but that's one man's opinion. I don't like to get into politics, and I know people will jump on me if I say that. So anyway, but I think we do need to control the rhetoric, and I don't know that that's ever going to happen because sells newspapers, magazines, and media time. So at any rate, that's defamation for you. If you need help with the defamation case, plaintiff defense work, anti-SLAPP, those kinds of things, actual malice tests, give us a call. You know where to find us on the web at attorneysteve.com. That's attorneysteve.com, the first name in legal services. So we'll keep an eye out, let you know where this case goes. Maybe it's ripe for a settlement. Maybe it goes to trial. Who knows? We'll find out. But that's it. If you like this video, give me a subscribe. And if you have any comments that are nice, friendly, not mean, I'm not looking to make a mean channel here or argue with everybody. This is just an informational channel. This is legal information only and not legal advice. Attorney Steve out. I got to run. That's what's going on here in the world of defamation, politics, and gun control.